We are recording, and now we are going to go live. Give me one
Great.
second for Facebook to get going, but we should be live soon. Hey everyone, thanks again for tuning in this afternoon. Today I've got a special guest by the name of Steve Good with me. Steve has
How are
actually a
you?
pretty interesting background. So rather than me introducing him or anything like that, Steve, do you want to maybe take 5 minutes, talk about how you got into this crypto space, how this whole thing came about?
It's a bizarre story actually. So I've been living in London for a number of years, and I was mostly in big corporate IT, like many people, working for big corporates or startups, mixing between the two. And I had been working for a company for a number of years, international company, and I decided it was time to do something new. And before I launched into starting the company, I thought, you know what I should do is go get a marketing guy to kind of coach me and guide me and teach me some new things. And this guy was, he was like a mad scientist. He was crazy. He was really funny. And, he taught me a lot of new techniques about marketing and sales and things I'd never thought of. And one day he comes to my office and shows up with this catalog and says, Steve, I've got this amazing catalog. And I said, well, what's in it? And he's like, well, you can buy all these crazy services, anything you want, but you do it with this thing called Bitcoin. This is 2010. And I'm thinking this guy is either visionary or he's just completely gone off piste here. I don't know what to think of him. And that was actually my first introduction to Bitcoin, was back in 2010. And my God, I wish I had listened to him, but I didn't. And it took me another 4 years until I went off to an event.
So hold on. He told you about it, but you did not pull the trigger?
Nothing.
Ah!
No, I know. I completely blew it. It's like, come on. So listen, roll forward to 2014. You want to hear epic fail number 2? Okay, so epic fail number 2. I went to an event that was hosted by a reasonably well-known author called Neil Strauss, who runs a group called the Society International, which is a group for men to grow and become better people and to help to change the world. And
yeah, I am
about it.
friend. I don't know if it's friend's the right term, but a colleague of mine that I know of in the industry was responsible for his launch. So
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, but no, he definitely did well for himself. As I think he was the pickup artist, wasn't he? Or he's rebranded now?
He was the pickup artist once long ago, and then he had a ceremony, and he had to bury Style in the Hollywood Hills. Got married to Ingrid. They had a child.
Oh, he's married? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah. To a model, Ingrid, lovely girl, and he's a great guy. I mean,
So if you know that world, I also I went to school with Tucker Max.
Okay.
And I don't know if you know who Tucker Max is, but he was kind of
Yeah, I know the name. I mean, I know Adam Lyons as well, so maybe I'm hanging around with the wrong. My wife will kill me if she sees. Oh, no, she won't, because she knows them as well. But we laugh about it. To be fair, I read the game and then I tried some of the techniques. My wife probably knows this, but if she doesn't, she'll know it now. But I did try to use some of the techniques on her on the first time I met her. And the crazy thing was, I was actually at a housewarming party when I met her with my ex-girlfriend. And that wasn't going well at all, and I had to get rid of my ex-girlfriend anyway, so I was using all these pickup techniques that I had learned, and actually didn't really need many of them because the chemistry was just there. And roll 7 years forward, still married, 2 little kids, great. But
well, so you at one point studied, would that be pickup artistry? Would that be the term? Or
I don't know. They just say that you're a PUA or a pickup artist. I mean, I wouldn't say I was one. I was sort of late to the game because I was just reading his book and trying to understand how it worked. And I didn't have the wingman and I didn't have all the training. I didn't go on his courses, but I know a lot of guys who have now because I've met them through Neil and his groups. But I've been married for a while, so even when I joined Society, I was already married.
And we're getting off topic. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we are. Okay, so go back to Bitcoin 2014. So Neil has this event called Finding the Future in Silicon Valley, and we did a bunch of really cool things. One of them was we went to NASA and we watched how they simulate flying helicopters over Los Angeles, but we weren't in Los Angeles, of course. So they just do the simulation, but they're flying the Blackhawks over the ocean and simulating war simulations. And then we had other things we covered off, like about graphene, and then we talked about Bitcoin. And we had this amazing discussion that went on for, I think it was 2014 or maybe 2015, but this big, long discussion about Bitcoin and the future of creating your own money with these things called ICOs. And you know, you're going to guess what I didn't do. I didn't react.
Wow, so
but yeah, right.
And that's around the time when the first Ethereum ICO came out. I think Ethereum ICO
Right.
was it 2000?
Something like that.
Yeah, it was a little later on that, but it was around that time. And
So,
Bitcoin in 2014 was it? I think it was a couple $100. I mean, it peaked and then it came down a bit. Well,
I don't know. I never bothered to check because I'd be so depressed if I knew.
Oh, yeah.
So, but this time I actually started thinking about it seriously and said, I got to look into this stuff, but I'm not sure when because I'm in the middle of working for a big corporate company. And then I was starting my own company, and then, there were a lot of things going on, and moving house and having kids. And I kept saying to my wife, you know what, I really need to look at this stuff that we talked about in society. Because, every time when you go to one of these events, there are always tons of takeaways. And that was my big takeaway from that event was I really need to know what the future holds. I need to focus on it if I really want to be successful. And I need to figure out what I'm awesome at and kind of join the two together. So the long and short of it is I didn't do anything about it until about midway through 2017 when I started looking at Ethereum and started trying to figure out how does all this stuff work. And I finally bought some Ethereum at $9. So
well, that's not bad. I mean,
yeah, not bad, and then at 18, and then when I bought it at 18, my wife was like, this was in January of 2016, I think it was 2016.
Probably at 18, it was beginning of 2017.
2017, yes, that's right. So 2017,
yeah.
Right, 2017, beginning of the year. So it was around, $18. And then she and I remember going off for a weekend in Prague, and she's like, can you just tell me what the price of Bitcoin is, or Ethereum? I said, yeah, it's $29. Well, it came down from 35. I said, yeah. She's buy more. And I had gone from this wonderful woman who wouldn't even talk about it. And suddenly she's like, oh yeah, you know what? We've got to get into it. Now she's working with me in crypto as an ICO advisor in marketing. And I'm out doing ICO advisory work with, a number of companies doing strategic stuff because of my background in management consulting, along with running my own podcast. So called the Coin Chat. So it's like you start with somebody who has no interest and says, this is crazy stuff. And the next thing you know, I've dragged her right into it. And now she's side by side with me full time every day.
Well, that's really exciting, especially if, you're able to work with your spouse on something that you guys are both passionate about.
It's great because we can work from home. It means we can spend more time with the kids. And of course, there's conferences and events, and I do public speaking as well. So I do get pulled around here and there. I did a couple of trips to India doing presenting. I'm off to Estonia next month for a presentation. So, there's a lot of things going on, but you still have the luxury of working from home most of the time, which is quite cool. And working with people from all over the world, which is even more amazing.
So let's, ask some questions. It's always fun to, I always love getting opinions, and I'll have a tendency to maybe toe the line. But maybe, since you are, so if I were to, your area of expertise, it's ICO advising. Are you more of like a reporter type? Or are you actually, you're a management consultant? Help me understand,
I guess you could say that I would kind of say I'm more like strategic advisor to ICOs in the sense of starting with token economies and helping them figure out what their token economy looks like. I've spent a lot of time studying psychology and understanding human behavior. So what you'll find with a lot of ICOs is their whole mindset is, I have the best idea ever. And I say, really? So how come no one knows about you, e.g. awareness? And, well, okay, they know about us, so why aren't they giving us money? So what I end up doing is I start with token economies and websites and helping them structure the messaging and how they look. But then you actually realize that when you start drilling down into it, a lot of it's about how do you communicate with people. So, you go through a sales cycle. You go from awareness to image match, and then you have fact match, which is looking at white papers. And then you say, yeah, this is relevant to me. And okay, now that it's relevant to me, now I think I'll invest. But that doesn't create loyalty because loyalty comes after you bought it and then you see the product working. So like Apple is a great example of loyalty where they have brand loyalty, where everyone goes around showing their iPhone, going, look, I have an iPhone, you should have one too. And I say to ICOs, you're not going to get to loyalty and you're not going to get to funding if you're starting with just barely anyone knowing about you. And I give examples to people of things like, hey, you know that, for example, that the way we learn is that 70% of the world population learns from visual, and 25% from auditory, and 5% are emotional learners. And what that means is if I say to you, for example, I write an article and I say, have you seen our latest news? I'm appealing to 70% of people because I said, have you seen, which is a visual example. Or if I say, have you heard our latest news? I can now target the auditory learners. And an auditory article will probably be written and a visual one will have lots of pictures. And people are like, can you really do that? I said, yeah, we can do metrics on this stuff. So, I started with token models and now I'm getting into the, how do you actually, engage your users and understand how they perceive what you're saying rather than you telling me how great your project is. Actually, most of the ICO is really about raising the awareness, getting people to understand the project, resonates with them, and feeling connected with it before they'll even invest. And you have to know what the mindset is of the person who's receiving the message. And most people are thinking about themselves as ICO, startups. They're not thinking about the messages they're sharing and how they're received. So you go through the ICO. Go on. Yeah.
I mean, that becomes interesting because it's, this ICO world or the altcoin world, right? You literally have companies that are built on a dream and a white paper that are worth hundreds of millions or not billions. And then you have, they say it's all about the technology, but there's no technology. But they have managed to engage a community and it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like, if you're...
So here's the difference between 2017 and 2018. This is really interesting. So in 2017, you didn't really need to have a minimum viable product or prototype. People were like, that's all right. But it all changed in 2018, especially after the big dip in Feb March, whatever. Since then, it's almost like if you don't have a minimum viable product or a prototype, like raising money is like just like that much harder.
Well, that's how it probably should be because
correct. Yeah.
There have been some
absolutely
scams and all that. Wow.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah,
so
I know. Did you hear the story about this ICO in Germany? It was last week actually. So they had raised something like 40 or 50 million dollars.
Oh yeah, the guy posted a picture of him on the beach or whatever, and
said we're up on the beach. Thanks for all the money, and it was a joke.
Oh, it was a joke. Oh,
it was a joke because he was trying to do it like a big kind of market thing. Hey, we're here, and he wanted to get a lot of attention. And I think some investors pulled money. I'm not sure if they did, but I've heard stories that people are not happy with them at all because it's just not cool.
Yeah. Well, it's, I guess, what they say, right? Attention ultimately is the most valuable commodity. So, there's no such thing as
attention
PR.
comes first, and then people won't remember the positive or the negative. They'll just remember them. So it doesn't really matter later on.
Yeah. So let's talk about, so now in this ICO altcoin climate, traditionally everyone was saying we're utility tokens. And now there's this evolution. I think Polymath was the most recent one that came out, but now there's this new concept of a security token. I don't know
dividends or some sort of like payments every quarter or every month from our profits. There's it's just a token and there's no utility at all. It's just a token and that's it.
Yeah, so there's more of that. I mean, you've got, KuCoin, the exchange that pays profit sharing off of all their traffic and stuff like that, right? So
that's right.
Maybe
you can win a Lambo.
Yeah, well, that too, right? But you want to maybe talk about this a little more and, let's dive into this because it seems like this is your baby, the space. And for a lot of people, we all are here because we have seen the gains that have occurred. A lot of us feel like we've missed the boat. And even for some of us who've been here, we still see a lot of opportunity, but the landscape is shifting, right? So, let's talk about this. What is this security token? What's this utility? What's going on? Or what do you see it?
So I think, I think initially everyone was just trying to avoid the whole concept of a security because they didn't want to get regulated. But I think there's been a couple of things that have shifted over time. One is, first of all, let's go back to a token economy. So a token economy, the concept is your token's being used within your platform for some purpose, a transaction, a fee structure, and the token sitting on the outside on the exchange was more of a byproduct. And that was fundamentally the way that projects were being funded by VCs, like, the bigger name guys like Draper or Pierce or others like that. That's how they were chasing projects, or, funding them was based on having a good token economy. And that was a really big thing, for the last year and a half or so. And then all of a sudden, there's been a shift. And I think partially that shift came about because a lot of people were just chasing the money in the ICOs only for the purpose of, hey, you know what, it's free money, it's easy money. And guess what? I've seen a lot more ICOs start and realize it's not easy money and disappear. But a lot of those projects were also just trying to raise money to put their token out in the public, and that was it.
And then they'd figure it out afterwards. They say, let's give it $10 million and I'm sure we can make some.
That's one factor. Now, there's another factor I've seen which is interesting, which is I'm seeing a number of projects now where they realize they don't really need to have their own coin if they're going to just do smart contracts on Ether. So why do an ICO? Why don't we just raise some money and let's not do a security or a coin. Let's just launch our project, get funding, and maybe not even do an ICO as such, just go and get funded, but then run a project that sits on the Ether network and just runs. And then there's the other projects which are, we don't have a token economy. Let's face it, we do X, and we sell cars. So, we're not gonna redefine the entire process for how we sell a car using a token, because that just doesn't make sense. So we'll just go ahead and create a token. I'm using a silly example, but and it's sort of come to the point where everybody wants to be in blockchain just for the purpose of blockchain. And sometimes it just doesn't make any sense, but, and sometimes it does make sense, but the security is just there because there's no real utility, or there might be some utility, but, if the coin is being really used as a major asset of the equity, and if you're giving out a dividend or any kind of a payment, then of course, you have to start looking at the rules around how you define and analyze what a security is. And it's, to be honest, I have security lawyer friends I call on to ask, how do you assess this? Because it's not my area of expertise at all. But, clearly the market has shifted a lot more toward a far greater range of ways to use the token other than as an economy.
Wow. So I think I look at this as it's a very important, so let me step back. I look at this market, I'm a fundamental investor. Some people are more technical investors, but, I'm the fundamental guy. So I look at this, and the reason why I'm focusing on this, or why I'm intrigued by this is, if I look at the macro trends to today is that most of the cryptocurrency market has been built off of, small retail, decentralized retail investors who, put some money in there. And, we've hit. I think what the market's at, like 300 billion or 400 billion right now. It topped out at 800 billion a couple months back before it, tailed down. Now, that being said, we all know that the quote unquote money is in the institutional side of the equation.
Absolutely.
And over the last 6 months, we've been making that bet, or, we've been looking at the fundamental indicators of, how can the, 40 trillion or 80 trillion or whatever that big number of just, institutional equity, institutional investment money, and then you add on the whole derivatives market on top of that gets to like, a bazillion trillions or whatever,
Oh, yeah. There's a whole bunch of like underlying ways of trading that aren't even present in these exchanges, which are all coming as well. So you're absolutely right.
So there is a fundamental, I guess, bet that I'm making where I'm looking at this saying, okay, if 5% or 3% or 10% of institutional capital flows into this asset class, the market cap of crypto will go from, will be worth a couple $1 trillion. And that gives me the opportunity for a complete, a massively asymmetric return. So I look at this and I'm saying, okay, securities are interesting. I like regulation. I like these things. There's obviously issues, but it seems to be like if that happens, or as that happens, that's going to open the floodgates for institutional capital to really start coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's already happening. In fact, I don't know if you saw the news that about 2 weeks ago, George Soros announced he's jumping in. The Rockefeller family announced they're jumping in. The Rothschild family announced they're jumping in. And then Mike Novogratz, who's from Fortress Capital in the past, had hired out a guy from Goldman Sachs to be the COO of his new crypto fund, which he launched last December, but didn't start the trading because he was waiting for all of this, bear market stuff to end. Probably by now he's probably started his fund. So you're absolutely right. It's not just institutional, it's family money as well. And there's certainly a big movement of institutional VC family money moving into crypto now, without a doubt.
Okay. So what are, in your opinions, how does this security token versus utility token, does that affect things? Should I be looking at more security tokens maybe instead of utility tokens? Because
Well, I mean, so it's interesting, right? The SEC says they're all securities anyway. I mean, if you're looking at it from a US perspective, and Singapore follows US law to some degree. UK law is not following it that way. They're a bit more relaxed about it, the definitions. I think at the end of the day, you have to, as you say, you're a fundamental guy, right? So you go back to the fundamentals of the company. And do they have a good business idea? Are they going to be able to make money? Are they going to be able to, successfully deliver what they've promised on their roadmap? Do they have the right team? I'm more interested in that as for any startup than I am looking at whether it's a token economy or a security, because at the end of the day, all the tokens are on an exchange anyway, and you're going to buy and sell tokens as a buyer or a seller, as a trader. And some people are going to go for the investment in the company, but if you're investing in the company, you're looking at fundamentals. And if you're trading, you're doing the technical aspects, or maybe both. So I don't think that really the token definitions, I mean, they matter a little bit because you don't really want companies just raising money to put a token out there. But you know what? It's changing, so maybe we do. And maybe it's time for some of the, Amazon has bought a bunch of URLs in crypto. Maybe they're going to do something in that space. Telegram is doing something to go to crypto. And will it be a security token or not? I don't know. But I think it's going to just keep evolving. And I couldn't give you an answer to, which direction's best. I like the fact that companies use their token as a utility within their platform because it says they're creating some sort of an economy and they're driving a business model with it. But not everyone's doing that. And I guess, it's changing and we have to kind of live with the changes. So I guess I'm rolling with it rather than being opinionated about it.
Interesting. So now in your case, in addition to what you do, you also, I believe you host a podcast. So
I do have a podcast, called The Coin Chat, which is found on, it's on Spotify, Apple, Google, SoundCloud. Doing reasonably well. Obviously Feb and March were terrible months this year. So, the viewership was reflective of the downturn in the market. But for having only launched in November, we had 10,000 downloads in January. So for me, that was a really positive, statement that people were interested to learn about crypto. And that's what we've aimed it at, was helping people learn how to get started and to understand what we're doing in crypto and to understand what wallets and private keys are. And as we progressed, over time, we're getting more guests on the show and we're progressing in terms of interviewing a range of people from fund managers to security and technical experts and ICOs so that people get exposed to more of what's happening in the market. And it's only done once a week, so we can't cover everything, unfortunately, because there's just thousands of things going on. But we just try to pick up the most relevant topics each week and just dig in and help people understand what's happening.
No, definitely. So speaking of that then, since you meet all sorts of interesting people or whatever, what's top of mind right now? What's someone you talked to, I don't know, was it last week or the week before, what's the trend? What's the big thing that we should all be looking at?
Bitcoin going above 10,000 is the big topic right now.
Oh, okay. And what does that mean? I guess.
Well, so that goes back to the technical analysis. So we had the big drop. It went down to six and a half or 6,700, whatever it was. And there's when you look at technical analysis, you look for support and resistance. And right now there's a line that you can draw on a technical chart that shows Bitcoin was around 10,000, and that's was a support line, and we broke past it. So now it's a resistance line. So even this morning, there was some analysis saying that, once we hit 10,000, if we cross above that, we're heading back up to 11 and a half, 12 and a half. So I think there's more talk about that because it sort of indicates a reinterest and a stability and a kind of move back into a more bullish market again. That will then, kind of ignite everything else. Because I think, to be honest, for the last few months, everything has sort of been a bit quiet because people were waiting to see whether crypto was going to die or keep going. And I think, people were that dire. I mean, portfolios were down 80%, 75% for a lot of people. So, of course, what's next is it going to survive or not? Of course, it's
that's funny. I mean, and as an investor, it's always fascinating, right? We all like the fundamental rule of investing is to buy low and sell high. But the thing is, no one ever buys low, and everyone wants to buy high, and they want to sell when it's low. So the fact that when the market's going down, a sophisticated, a professional investor who knows how to make money looks at that and they should you start kind of shaking your hand, you start rubbing your hands, you're like, life is good, and the retail person's like, oh my god, crypto's dead, it's dying, the world's on fire. And
so markets go down, investors buy more. Markets go down, like big investors, and when markets go down, the small guy sells because he's freaking out that he bought high, now he's selling low. Rather than doubling down and actually lowering his cost of ownership, he's doing exactly the opposite of what he's supposed to do. And that's just fear. So what do we do when we do that? We create more fear. We drive the market down further. And the big money guys are saying, great, it's down. Buy, buy, buy. And I mean, I know a few guys like that. I was on the phone with one of them. It was very funny because the price of Bitcoin, this was last year even, when the price had gone down, I don't know, 1,000 coins or something. And I'm on the phone with them, and Coinbase had been down for a bit. And he says, Steve, I'm going to have to put you on hold for a second. And I said, what's going on? He said, yeah, Coinbase just came back up. I got to buy all the Bitcoin I can to max out my credit card. At the time, it was like a 16K limit. So he buys all 16K worth and goes, okay, I've got my 16K of Bitcoin, so let's keep chatting. And actually, in the same conversation, he said, just watch this space. The institutional guys are coming in sometime next year, probably Q1, Q2. So here we are talking about it and actually thinking back on it. He actually said the same thing to me.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Okay, so going back to this, I think there was a lot of hype earlier this week, right? Bitcoin hit a $9,700 high, but I guess people are saying that was kind of a pump fake, and now we might be headed back down to 5,000, or what's this talk about this sort of stuff?
No, I think that we're like I said, I mean, we're in a bit of a trading range right now. It's trading at 8,000, almost 8,900. So we're trading in the 9,000 range, and actually, what we're really doing is we're kind of playing around between 8 and 9,000, looking for we're kind of testing the waters here. To be honest, that's what a lot of people are doing. And one little move, and it's going to go to 10 and then break out above 10. So this is all part of that testing the 10,000 level. I don't really have, the technical charts that people have shown me, and I know some technical analysts that have been showing me the charts, and and then you can follow people like Tom Lee from Fundstrat, who's always on CNBC talking about the direction of it. And
you just said like $90,000 or something, didn't he? Or I saw an article on that.
I thought his latest numbers were like 25K sometime around June, July timeframe. I've seen another analyst that was talking about 50,000 by the end of the year. And I think it was Tim Draper that was talking about some like 200,000 by 2020 or something like that. Like really big number. I'd have to fact check myself on that, so don't quote me. But but it was, there's a lot of very bullish people out there on crypto. I'm not particularly worried about, Bitcoin going back up. I think that's just fear talking, that when you go through a bit of a cycle like we went through, people are scared about it going back down again. And actually, I think it's much healthier that it's going up at a slower pace now rather than rising as fast as it did. It was like, in November, December, it was like every week it was going up 1,000 points. That's just too much, too fast. And of course, if you see a line that's going up like a straight line, it's like an airplane. If it goes straight up, the engines are going to stall and the airplane's going to come back down. And that's exactly what happened. We ran out of energy to keep going. So I just think this is a pretty stable place that we're at, and it's gradually increasing. And everybody just wants it to go to the moon, or to Jupiter or whatever, and they want it to go fast, and everyone's in a rush to make big money. But the smart investor knows that, good things take time and you can't be in a rush. It just has to happen when it happens. And that's just what it is.
No,
But I'm not
definitely.
worried. I'm not worried. I'm very confident that crypto is staying around and Bitcoin is going to keep going back up. And if I was panicking, then I'd probably not be talking to you. I'd probably be staring at the screen saying, what should I do? What should I do?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was, if I'm just looking at the portfolio just today,
Yeah.
uh, looks like there was a bit of an early morning dip that occurred,
Yeah, that's right.
but now it's mostly back to where things were,
Yeah,
and we're
from this
looking
morning.
at,
Yeah. So for me, the last 12 hours, it's been more or less in the same place, up and down a little bit, but you know, you know, it's down 5% or something from a couple days ago. So, that's nothing. You know, the Dow Jones can go down 2 or 3% and then drop another 500 points or 400 points, and everyone's like, buy. There's more buying time. It's low. Let's buy. It's a bull market.
yeah, and crypto,
Crypto.
10% daily swing is really not that interesting, which is
No, and to
kind
be honest, if you look at an actual chart of Bitcoin and you look at just all the bottoms, it's still in an uptrend because you're looking at the bottoms, not at the top. So if you look at all the bottoms and just draw a line, it's still uptrending. It's not downtrending. And people that are panicking are panicking just because they've just been through a rough patch, as we all have. And the more experienced guys say just hodl
of.
or hold on for dear life, whatever you want to call it, and just keep going and don't worry about it because it's not going away. People are using it. They're building more companies and more platforms. And yes, a lot of these ICOs will fail because startups do. But there's a lot of hedge funds out there that are assessing ICOs a lot more and working with the top ones and weeding out all the bad ones. And a lot of people are going to try and not make it as well. But this is all going to be, at the end of the day, it's like a technology. It's in the first or second inning, and it's got a long way to go before we really have maturity and have a complete deployment of it. And 1 or 2% of the total world population is even on crypto right now. So you think of it from that perspective, we have a long way to go still before crypto is widely adopted and it's on everyone's lips.
Definitely. So now, one of the interesting things that have come up now, especially with this latest rally, if it's even said that, is the concept of, Bitcoin dominance, right? In the old world, old world meaning 3 months ago, it was always, everyone had to get into Bitcoin before you could go into alts. So there was almost like this process where like money would flow
Right.
into Bitcoin, then, Bitcoin would go up, then Bitcoin would go down because money would go to the alts and everything, on that front.
You know why that was happening as well, right?
No,
The,
feel
the
free. Well,
main
I've got
yeah
my
so
opinion. Love to
Yeah,
hear yours.
the main reason that's happening is for just two things. So first of all, the underlying market of crypto is Bitcoin. So it's like the trading on the Nasdaq with the USD or on the FTSE with the pound. You have to have the dollar or the pound if you're going to trade on the Nasdaq or the FTSE. If you want to
Correct.
trade in Bitcoin, you have to buy Bitcoin. That's your first starting point. The second is that most people sell Bitcoin and nothing else. I mean, Coinbase now has Litecoin and they have Ether and they have Bitcoin Cash. But for the most part, people start by buying Bitcoin first. So, of course, if you want to trade in the altcoins, you need to buy Bitcoin first to then buy the altcoins. There isn't a way to go out and buy Sia Coin or ChangeBank or 10x or any other platform out there directly. You have to start with Bitcoin or Ether because those are the only two major trading markets. I mean, you can't use Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash even because there are no markets to use in the exchanges to do that. So I think it's very logical that the ebbs and flows of Bitcoin are oftentimes related to money has to move into Bitcoin first before you can buy anything else.
So now, do you see that changing though? I mean, it looks like, over time, whether it's Coinbase or, NASDAQ made an announcement that
Yeah, I
like,
saw that. So Dina Friedman, which is great because a woman in blockchain, fantastic. It'd be great to see her really push more on that. I thought it was great that she made that announcement today about looking at it. So the
yeah,
answer to that question about, so fundamentally, here's how it works. The exchanges are all defined by what are called markets. And most of the markets in the crypto world are the underlying structure is you're either trading with Ether 2 coin or Bitcoin 2 coin. So those are your two markets, are Bitcoin or Ether. Now you have Binance that has its own coin and KuCoin that has its own coin. So they create their own markets. And then Neo is used as a market, which is another competitor to Ether. But those are the main markets that most coins are listing on. It's either Ether or Bitcoin. So for it to change, we need the exchanges to start deciding they want to offer that as a mechanism, which probably wouldn't really be very likely because it's too complicated for the exchanges, and it's too complicated for ICOs because they need to pay to list on every single exchange and then every single market for every exchange, which becomes too complicated. More likely, we're going to start to see things called atomic swaps. So an atomic swap is, so to roll back, an atomic swap is to trade any coin for any coin. And the reason why you can't trade any coin for any coin is because different coins are designed around different algorithms. So for example, Bitcoin sits on SHA-256, and so does Namecoin and Peercoin and Counterparty, but Ether sits on Fhash. So in fact, the exchanges are creating a mechanism where you can trade from Ether to Bitcoin, for example, because they're making that happen within the exchange. But an atomic swap is to be able to switch between one algorithm and another. And technically, it's very difficult to implement that on a technical level. So there's a lot of experimentation going on right now to create methods for doing atomic swaps. So for example, to trade from Litecoin to Ripple, or to trade from NEM to Sia coin or whatever. So
yeah.
that level of trading is where the problem actually lies, is the ability to swap between any two coins. So if that were the case, that we could do that, then really you could move to the next model, which would be, I have USD, pound, euro, whatever, and I want to just buy coin X, whatever coin that is, Ripple. Okay, I bought my Ripple or my Monero or my PIVX, and now that I've got that, I want to use that coin to buy something else. And that's probably where we're going to head toward, and that's really when you get into, that's almost like FX, right? You've got, dollar yen trading, and you've got dollar ruble trading, and you've got euro ruble trading, and then you just move between currencies. And that's fairly fluid as long as there's a trade pair. So ultimately, these trade pairs don't exist, and either the exchanges have to create it, or a more technical solution has to be implemented to do it. But it's complicated because which coins should we actually support and which ones shouldn't we? So I think for now, just having two markets is probably the best thing, and over time maybe two or three others. But we don't want to make it overly complicated. I think the goal is to simplify the whole thing by letting it be freely traded between everything.
So now you've got, I've got two more. Oh, I keep, every time you say something.
Sorry, I took you down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, no. So this begs to, become an interesting question, right? It seems like a lot of ICOs use the strategy, because of the reality of, call it, the infancy of an atomic swap or the requirement to get on the exchanges, an ICO
Right.
out on Ethereum, but then start a migration process to their own platform. I think the latest one out there is Tron, right? Tron really hit the market by storm. He created a little bit of controversy. I don't know if he meant to do that or not by
plagiarizing his white paper, you mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, you could call that a marketing stunt. You could call that, whatever. But, he definitely got himself out there. And now that they're out there, they're saying, well, okay, guess what? No more Ethereum. We're going to move to our own chain, and it is what it is. Good luck.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who want to build their own blockchains. And, the hardest part about building your own blockchain goes down to getting people to host masternodes so that you can make transactions go through. I mean, the beauty of Bitcoin and Ether is there's huge adoption on mining, but that's proof of work. But if you go down the path of a proof of stake model where you have a PC and you're staking coins, and those coins are out there as a mechanism to say, I'm here to provide transactions on your behalf, blockchain X. In order for blockchain X or Y or Z to actually be successful, they need mass adoption of people saying, okay, I'll go ahead and I'll host a node for verifying transactions for you. And the hardest part is, how many different networks would you have to create, and how many people would have to host how many different blockchains to make those blockchains successful? So that doesn't sound like a very successful path going forwards if you end up with everyone doing that, because then you're going to get a lot of projects that fail and end up having to go and hop on someone else's again. So, I'm not sure what the right answer to that is, but I think you'd probably need some consolidation at some point where people say, there's a thing called whatever, and that's the method for validation, and multiple coins could stake on the same thing rather than everyone doing their own thing. So I think there's some level of consolidation we would need from a technical perspective to make it so that, you know, not everyone's trying to make their own blockchain and be independent, because that's not going to work.
Well, would that be consolidation? Is that practical, or would it be more of a world of interoperability, right? Because there's guys
Well,
like
maybe it's more, yeah. So exactly, maybe it's like interoperability, where you have, let's say, some company where, and someone's probably going to take this idea and go, great idea. You know, let's say you took a company and you said, I'm going to create this kind of ultimate master node where multiple coins can sit on this master node, so that you can basically stake on behalf of multiple blockchains. Why not? I mean, that would be really cool. That might pose a whole series of other problems, but maybe it's technically feasible and doable. But that would be a more efficient way than me having to run 10 different, you know, companies' software packages on my PC to stake for them individually so that their networks are effective.
No, that's great. So we've been on for a little bit of time, and it's about time to wrap up. But before we do, I always love to, you know, get someone's opinion. It's pretty clear that you're fairly bullish, but I'd like to assess how bullish you are. So if you recall, you know, last fall there was a controversial figure who fellow by the name of McAfee, who made a proclamation that, you know,
you would eat some member if a certain thing happened, right?
Exactly. And we're not that far away from, you know, that countdown date. It's coming along, and, you know, what do you think?
Remind me what was the date and the amount? He said like 50,000 by, was it 50,000 by a certain date?
Let me Google it really quick. McAfee
Okay.
Bitcoin is okay. So basically, so McAfee originally had a model that Bitcoin would hit $500,000 by 2020.
Okay.
And he
in a shorter term one as well, right?
Yeah, there's a shorter term, but in December of last year, he upped the ante to say it would be $1 million, I believe, and
By 2020.
By 2020. So if not,
okay.
You know, he made a comment that he would eat his, you know,
his lower half. Yeah.
national television. So it was definitely, you know, pretty bullish. Some might say a little, you know, there's probably a little bit of irrational exuberance.
Yeah, absolutely. He was part of that whole bull run that happened last year.
So, you know, curious about you know, I mean, are you that much of a believer, $1 million Bitcoin in a couple of years, or maybe let's look at it in, you know, this year, you know, is it a $50,000 Bitcoin, $100,000?
I tend to think it could, I mean, you know, if we get back into a proper bullish run, I mean, to go in the 25 to 50,000 range by end of year would seem reasonable. If it's going further than that, I would say you're going back into that problem of too fast, too high up, and you end up with the stalled airplane that ends up with the engines just not being effective, and it starts to fall down again. So I would prefer a slower pace of growth than, you know, over accelerated. But, you know, remember, the one factor that's going to drive Bitcoin up is we only have between 1% and 2% of the global population even in crypto. If we start to get any form of, you know, awareness, and by awareness I mean I go out every week, I try to spend Bitcoin for fun, and I record on my podcast every week how did I get on. And I've been to Sunglasses Hut, I've been to Rolex, I've been to Swarovski, I've been to the Penguin clothing shop in Miami at the airport, and on. And all I get are, you know, blank stares and ridiculous responses of I've never heard of it. So for us to actually start to see that level of acceleration, then we need to see, you know, the user communities, the global population adopting and becoming more aware of it. So awareness first, and then, you know, getting to the point where they're buying it. And I think we're not quite there yet, but there's going to be some form of general population acceptance, and that will accelerate the price of everything because money will flow in. So I don't know when that would be, but could that happen by 2020? Sure. If we go from 1% to 5%, that's a 5x on where we are in terms of, you know, money movement. Not necessarily in terms of, you know, actual money, but in terms of, you know, potentially volume or, you know,
okay, so you're bullish on Bitcoin, and your rationale for being bullish on Bitcoin is a user adoption rationale,
Yeah.
because today you say 1 or 2% of the population owns Bitcoin, and you
Or
believe,
crypto, right?
or crypto, and you believe that in the next couple of years, if that number went from 1 or 2% to 5%, the increased demand for Bitcoin, given the fact that it is a finite and limited supply, would cause the value of Bitcoin to appreciate
I think
dramatically.
simply supply and demand. I mean, the maximum supply of Bitcoin is 21 million,
Mm-hmm.
and 21 million, I think, right? And
Yeah.
the global population is obviously a lot bigger than that, and the number of people that are, in Bitcoin is quite small, relatively speaking. So, assuming that people are going to get into crypto, okay, maybe it's not Bitcoin, but certainly the crypto market in general's market cap will just increase as people adopt. There's a couple of really good global examples we see where this is happening already, where we're being forced into crypto. So one is Venezuela, where Bolivar is worthless. People are using it for toilet paper, sadly, because it's of no value. So when people go into a shop to buy something, there's only two ways they can buy something now. One is they're actually using dollars off their PayPal account, and the other is they're paying with crypto. So there's an interesting problem with that, because the shops that receive the crypto need to then use that crypto to buy goods for their shops. And presumably, upstream distributors are starting to accept it. And upstream from there is bigger distributors who are going to have to accept it, or someone's converting it back to dollars or cash. So there's a number of countries that are starting to see, currency collapse, and they're shifting either to USD or to crypto. So just that alone is also creating another ecosystem that's driving us toward a more seamless environment where one currency tends to work everywhere. So, I think there's a lot of different factors that are playing into this that are going to drive crypto adoption up, notwithstanding the fact that, I could send you Ether right now and you'd have it in a couple of seconds, as opposed to sending it through a bank and waiting a couple of days, which is hardly efficient. So there's a lot of, value in the sense that crypto has made it easy for us to transact and work together, from banking and payments to logistics systems that can track things across a blockchain. And, that adoption is taking place wider and wider at, bigger and bigger companies. So I just think that over time it's going to continue to evolve and grow, much like the internet, took some time, and eventually it got adopted more and more. And now we're buying all of our goods and services and getting deliveries of everything we want at home through internet. And now we have smartphones, and we can do all sorts of crazy things with apps on smartphones. So these are just steps in our technical evolution that keep occurring. And this is just another one of them. And, who knows what comes after crypto? It'd be something even more interesting in terms of how we interact and share information. But I just think crypto will just, I'm not saying bullish like McAfee bullish, but I think there's certainly an argument that says, so long as there's a population that continues to adopt, and you start to see more shops that start accepting it, just that acceptance alone will drive more people onto using Bitcoin, buying it, and spending it. And particularly, I think the spending will probably occur when the price stabilizes more, which that may be a few years away. Or it may not be that Bitcoin's the coin used for a transaction. It could be Bitcoin Cash, it could be Ethereum, it could be Litecoin, or some other coin we haven't even seen yet. So there's a lot of possibilities, but I think that's what's exciting about this, is that there are. And it's a disruptive and innovative technology that's, you and I both know, is changing our world and changing our lives. As you say, you've got a Facebook group with 60,000 people, and if you talked 2 years ago, you would have said there's no Facebook group at all, probably.
Yeah, no, we've definitely we've definitely built a what we feel is a good community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exciting. It's a very exciting time. And yeah, no, that's great. So with that, let's wrap up. Thank you again.
Thank you.
For your time. Steve, if anyone wants to, I guess, find you, I guess the podcast is going to be the best way. Do you want to maybe just tell them where they go?
I have a new website that'll be up very soon called asksteve.ninja, which is where everything about accessing me for speaking engagements, listening to all my podcasts, and other things that I'm involved with in terms of crypto. But of course, you can also just search for the Coin Chat on the podcast section of Spotify, Apple, Google, SoundCloud. very easily found as long as you're in the podcast section, because if you're in music or movies, you won't find me there. And yeah, that's the way to find me.
Great.
And thank you very much. I really appreciated the opportunity to speak with you. It's been a lot of fun.
No, definitely. Cool. Well, hey guys, thanks for tuning in again. We've got a packed week ahead of us. Lots of discussions. We've actually been having we've been exploring both crypto and cannabis. You know, the kind of two most exciting worlds out there. So thanks for tuning in.
And not AI. Thank you.
Can only do so much. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.